Welcome, Initiate, welcome. Have you heard the good news? Terrible Writing Advice is doing a video on writing cults. There are many hurtful stereotypes, and I'm going to cover them all. Prepare yourself, Initiate. Now let me just perform this dark sacrifice and we can get started. Cults are a common villain in many works, as well as a favorite antagonist of dungeon masters and other connoisseurs of tabletop role-playing games. Now, a writer shouldn't be afraid of writing a cult. I assure you that my writing advice will all be very reasonable and positive. Why this video is all about improving yourself, giving you a higher purpose, and finding a place where you truly belong. I bid you welcome to our ranks, Acolyte, now that you have completed your initiation. Now, as an acolyte to writing cults, there are new responsibilities a writer needs to take up, for the good of everyone, of course. Don't worry, these are very simple. See, a writer adding a cult to their work has to design the cult. Now, I'm not going to bore everyone over definitions or play word games about what is or isn't a cult. Feel free to argue about that in the comments. Instead, I'm going to cover a few of the more common types of cults found in fiction. Cults can take a wide variety of forms, from a hooded religious secret order to a multi-level marketing scheme. Many are offshoots of a mainstream religion, just with a very odd interpretation of said religion, and vary wildly in size, from small groups to immense world-spanning organizations. In terms of adapting this to fiction, the possibilities are vast and full of creative potential. Potential that we are going to throw away and stick to the classic chanting hooded dudes with gnarly daggers and dark temples. This stock appearance is mandated, Acolyte. You understand, right? It's not unreasonable to have the cult mandate a uniform, even if that uniform is the most stock kind. This hood makes them look equal parts mysterious and sinister, even if it does restrict their peripheral vision and makes them look like every other cult in fiction ever, and the number of real cults that use hooded robes is actually kind of low. If we do get to see their faces, then they have mysterious runic tattoos and are probably some combination of sickly pale, oozing with dark magic, and or mutated with tentacles, which must make their recruitment drives a bit awkward. Women cultists are contractually obligated to show off their cleavage. Remember that these cultists wear their hoods and robes all the time, not just during their ornate ceremonies. Can't they at least hire some PR specialists to redesign their uniforms? Are like the hoods bought in bulk or something? Don't ask questions like that, Acolyte. Free your mind from such petty distractions. Why don't we instead focus those thoughts on expanding the cult? We are always looking for new members. Now we have our token, scantily clad woman cultist, of which we will have exactly one. The rest is just hooded dudes for as far as the eyes can see. And our sole woman cultist will never be killed by the heroes unless she was an eldritch abomination all along. If she gets killed at all, it's the Disney cliff for her. Say hi to Gaston for me. Children are nowhere to be found in the cult, except on the sacrificial altar. See, it has to be hooded dudes, because we can't have our heroes slaughter women and children cultists. Hooded dudes are fair game though. The heroes and or player characters are free to slaughter them all without a second thought. They are just generic bad guys and not like human beings. Remember that people are either victims or villains, never both. See, I'm nothing like those evil cultists who only see the world in black and white. Much like how no time should be spent on considering the humanity of the cultist, a writer should also completely skip out on showing how the cult controls its members, like how cults isolate their members by demonizing family members outside the cult, moving them to a remote compound, employing massive amounts of gaslighting, separating parents from their children and then turning them against each other, humiliating cultists seemingly at random, employing thugs to keep the other cultists in line, convincing the cultists to turn over all of their finances to the cult, instilling an us versus them mentality, telling the cultists that the rest of the world is out to get them, conditioning members to have irrational fears about leaving the cult, the ever-looming threat of becoming an person to everyone in the cult and thus lose all of the relationships built up there, and even repeated use of slogans and phrases to discourage free thought. Wait, this sounds like another video I did. The love triangle! Almost forgot the love triangle. What was I thinking about? Now, don't worry, Acolyte. You won't need to be distracted by sinful thoughts when instead, all you will need is the righteous fervor to win over new initiates. How does our cult spread and bring in new members? I have no idea. The cult just kind of comes out of nowhere and lands in the setting without any kind of foreshadowing or preamble other than a hearsay story from the barkeep NPC or a notice board missive. It's not like the player characters or heroes could encounter the cult's recruiters in town and come into immediate conflict with them, or have another character request that they save an indoctrinated loved one that has been inducted into the cult's ranks. No, the cult is always highly isolated, secretive, and mysterious. Highly isolated, multi-generational cults tend to run into problems after their third generation because the children raised in the cult are usually given an indoctrination rather than an education, thus limiting their employment opportunities and, by extension, the cult's income, because control is more important to a good number of cults than anything else. As a result, a lot of cults need a constant influx of new members along with their money. In fact, some cults are basically built entirely around money rather than ending the world, but I hardly see how bottomless avarice would make for a good villainous motive. Addressing how the cult brings in new members and manages its money is an easy way to present story hooks as well to expand the world-building details of the cult. Or I can instead just have the cult borrow the Dark Lord's post-scarcity off-screen matter generator that he uses to equip his hordes with. The Dark Gods provide, after all. What about the cult's beliefs? Something child sacrifice dark gods ascension into the world? They worship evil, like literally. Now even real life cults generally believe they are the good guys. In fact, many believe they are the world's only good guys. Why some cults don't even worship a deity and instead adhere to more of a philosophy. Many have no real long-term objective at all other than to exert control over its members as much as possible while squandering the cult's finances on Rolexes and expensive cars. Not fictional cults. They don't need to feel like they are made up of people just looking for meaning and a place to belong. They openly worship the evil entity that wants to end the world and render existence into nothing. Because what else are they going to do on a breezy Sunday afternoon? Motive, dogma, and philosophy? Do they at least have a snazzy sales pitch? Of course not. Real-life cults don't rely on slick branding to cover up their ugly dogma, exploitative practices, and illegal activity. The cult starts evil and ends evil. That way, evil people will self-sort into the cult and thus free the writer from any moral complexity when the hero's in the cult with a pile of corpses on the floor. No need to contrast the cult's benign exterior with its dark inner workings. Like everything else in the story, the cult should also be hammered down into a single dimension, and if called out, a writer could always claim that the cult is mysterious. Mystery is an excellent substitute for substance. What about the cult's outer workings? I've danced around this issue, and it's important that the writer do so as well. That might drag out the cult story arc if the heroes discover the cult was in cahoots with the government the entire time and running an all-access local black site resort with an all-you-can-endure torture buffet. Have the cult be a heretical religion that spun off from an already established religion in the setting? That might turn things into a complex, multi-factional conflict that keeps the heroes on their toes, rather than the light filler adventure I wanted. Also, I would have to flesh out the religion that the cult spun off from, too, and I don't have the dedication for that, not even a lazy copy-paste of the Catholic Church. That's as difficult as building a cult around a personality. The hardest thing about writing a highly charismatic and persuasive cult of personality built around a character is that I would have to actually write a character. And, as I have stated before, I have the charisma of a moldy sock and about as charming, so writing charismatic characters is a non-starter for me. Instead, I'll make the cult leader insane with no clue as to how he managed to amass a following. He used dark magic or psychic powers to mind control people, and for some reason decided a cult was the way to go and not just put himself in charge of the entire country. Remember, the things that the cult leader does are insane, not calculated ways the cult leader expresses their power. The cult leader will monologue about how it's too late to stop the coming of the dark god or the end of the world or something. Don't bother showing them interacting with their fellow cultists doing really weird things while the cultists just go along with it, or have the cult leader engage in stunning levels of hypocrisy that no one questions. Is this to intentionally show off their power over the cultists while keeping them isolated? Do they wake up their cultists in the middle of the night and subject them to long, rambling, drug-fueled rants? Nope, they are just crazy, not drunk off the power they hold over people. Writers should avoid showing the cult leader use their charisma and charm to lure reasonable people into a situation where they have to put up with the cult leader's every sadistic whim or face repercussions from the rest of the cult. Could a writer also have their cult leader indulge in the trappings of wealth and collect luxury items, treasure expensive watches and cars, private jets, and even a fleet of cruise ships? Of course not. I don't want to redo the loot tables. Plus, I don't want the player characters to get that much wealth too quickly and unbalance the game. Remember that the cult leader is simply evil and insane and will not be able to keep up a convincing front for like 5 seconds. Also, don't contrast the cult leader's initial rise with their current descended state, because it's not like cult leaders get really unhinged and become extremely dangerous when the cult is about to fall apart and they are going to lose power. Now that you have met the leader, Acolyte, it's time for you to enter the inner circle. Now that you know the cult's secret, we can deal with those pesky heroes. How will the heroes deal with the cult? Well, obviously they will carefully plan, gather intelligence, and they'll just storm in guns a-blazing like a bunch of cowboys and hope it all works out fine. When the heroes storm in, I'm sure the women and children will just get out of the way and not act like they are in a cult. We can't have that. That might force the heroes into a compromising position and ruin the power fantasy. We can't have the heroes be forced to infiltrate the cult on a rescue mission. A direct attack would be more fun, even if it would put bystanders at risk. Nor can we have the heroes find a way to take out the cult leadership through a clever ambush, because it requires too much plot to set up. What if the heroes have to pretend to join the cult in order to save a loved one who's been indoctrinated? Nope, that would force the heroes into a tense psychological battle with the cult leader, and that wouldn't work because the only notes I have on the cult leader is his name is, hang on a second. Cult leader? It's a working title. What if the cult isn't dangerous to anyone but themselves, and the only way to avoid tragedy is to talk them down? All these solutions are a no-go because they undermine the whole reason of adding a cult to my story in the first place, and that's because I just wanted a bunch of disposable bad guys who look creepy and can be killed without a lot of thought or fuss. Well, also someone has to summon the Eldritch Abominations. We are not here to tell the cultist story. We are here so the heroes can slaughter nameless cultists. The cultist story begins and ends with a small bump in the hero's XP bar. Cults are evil because only evil people join them, not because they turn good, otherwise unassuming people into cultists. The cultist stories don't deserve to be told, even as a cautionary tale. Denying the cultist personhood is fine, because it's not like that's what cults do, and it's not like I'm missing out on good storytelling by doing so. The heroes don't need fleshed out antagonists or more than a cursory glance at the plight of those trapped in the cult. They need piñatas that drop random adventuring gear when broke. Villains are easy to deal with. Heroes merely need to apply their weapon of choice and problem solved. Swords, guns, lasers, and missiles can't heal victims though, so better that no cultists survive rather than dealing with the messy reality of surviving a cult, because most former cultists never fully recover from the trauma, but must instead learn to manage it. Besides, all those cultists are just crazy anyways, not normal people who got hooked in during a moment of vulnerability. I would never get drawn into a cult, and I'm sure that assumption will keep me safe all the way to the sacrificial altar.
This is the inner what's it? Could use a hotel. A big red one. I mean, assuming you own all the properties. What are those things and what is that scribble on them?
Those are TWA videos, most of which do not have their ads enabled.
Why not? Seems like a waste.
That would be because of JP's inner integrity.
Your rival?
Hardly. He was the inner that founded the Knights of Artistic Integrity, and the one who sealed the Intergate, which I intend to unseal. But first I need to recover something. It's good to have my old hands back.
Not so fast, greed. Your vile plot ends now. Sorry, I threw up a little after saying that. Nice gauntlet, by the way. Very thematically on point.
Thank you, DL. Now that
No more talking. No more monologues. No more excuses to slide into another sponsor. I am going to crush you here and now. This is my expanded universe to conquer.
But what about this video's sponsor, Campfire? They were gracious enough to support us.
I don't care. This isn't about money anymore. This is my turf.
Campfire is a tool that aids writers, dungeon masters, and storytellers to help them write and world build their stories. And now they have a mobile version.
Silence! You're just some weird thing that doesn't belong here.
Flesh out maps, monsters, entire cultures, magic systems, and more. Link these entries together to form a web of interconnected articles and then share them with other users to create shared collaborative universes. You can even use its word processor to write an entire novel on your phone. The Campfire mobile app is free with no ads, limits, or in-app purchases. Write better stories faster by going to bit.ly/TWA_mobile. Link is in the description below.
Ah, you were a nice warm-up there, DL. At least for a silly joke like everything else JP makes.
I was the first. I ushered in this expanded universe. This place is mine.
I don't care. You are a little side experiment. This is just an ad and you are just a gimmick, like all those CGI animal mascots in commercials. These tiresome skits need to end to make way for some real monetization, like this.
Oh no.
He just monetized every video in the entire TWA expanded universe.